everyone, I'm Carl Bierock. Welcome back to the Jaguar Football Podcast. And with us today is the 5-time conference champion. He's the head coach of Seckman Football, Dr. Nicholas Baer. Coach Baer, great to see you and congratulations on another conference championship.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. It was fun Friday night. We kind of put it to the boys. Winning a conference championship is a big deal, and we wanted to finish the job, and we did just that.
Yeah, amazing game. We've talked about on the podcast before, and just historically, Webster Groves has always played us tough. So wanted to get your thoughts about the game and just in general, a couple milestones once again set as we round out the regular season. Just wanted to have you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the game.
Yeah, we really came out, and it was great offensively to kind of really see, everything put together. Something we haven't really been able to do for the last few weeks. We were able to obviously kind of ground and pound and run the ball like we've always wanted to. And then, we were just clicking in the passing game, whether it was a go ball, slant route, post route, out route. We had that connection. We were blocking on the perimeter, and really that's what we've been trying to add every one of those pieces all season. And quite honestly, in my opinion, when Friday night against Webster was kind of our best offensive performance, watching it all come together. So, we talk about kind of making sure we're hitting that high note, peaking with our execution before playoffs. The offense couldn't have played a better game. So, very proud of them. It's kind of odd. We probably had one of our worst offensive weeks of practice. But yeah, they're kids, and we came out and we executed well. So that was great to see. And then defensively, their game plan basically was to protect with 9 guys in the box, and kind of run go routes and comeback routes with their 2 guys on the edges. And we call those 50-50 balls. So half the time they're going to catch them, half the time they're not, and that's about how it went. Hats off to the secondary. Colton Fowler with 2 interceptions, Boyer Hart with a couple pass breakups. It was pretty clear. They didn't think they could run the ball, so they tried to put it to the air, and those guys answered the call.
Yeah, great defensive effort for sure to hold an opponent like that to 23, 22 points or so.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the ball on the offense, you have a record-setting quarterback on your roster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about how obviously adding the passing game and having the ability and the skills and all the components to be able to move with it a little bit more this year. And we've Brody has set the record for most single season passing touchdowns. I think he's up to 18, and then for his career now, he also has the record, adding the 10 or so he had from last year. So he may be up to 28 or so. Where the previous record was 22. So hats off to him. Many more to come, right? A lot of work to do, this season for him, and then obviously into the next. And it was fun to see senior Cam Benson, get in the end zone. Obviously if the quarterback's setting records, so he's got to be throwing it to people. And we've got our 3-headed monster this year with Weidler and Heartfelt and Benson. And Benson's been the beneficiary of a couple more touchdowns. He had his 8th on Friday. And, that set a single season touchdown reception record, so good for him. I know these guys, obviously we always have team goals, and the guys are all about putting the team before self. But, we'd be silly to say they don't have some individual goals. So, and things that they want to accomplish, and hats off to those guys for putting in the work and getting it done.
No doubt. Just looking at the stats year over year, and even going back even 3-4 years from where we sit today, it was really driven by maybe 1 or 2 people, and you nailed it. It's like this ball is being distributed around through the air, but also on the ground. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the ground game and what you're seeing and how that still is Seckman football at the end of the day.
Yeah, we've been playing musical chairs up front with the offensive line all year. And it really feels like now we've got the 6 guys that we need to really be peaking towards the playoffs, and then the 7 or 8 guys, the 2 or 3 guys right behind them, they're nipping at their heels, making them better at practice every day. And if someone goes down, we're ready to go. And watching this group kind of grow together all season, and then really start to click Friday night was great to see. And, we've been working with the backs all year. At the beginning of the year, we were a little tiptoe happy when we got to the hole. Now we're getting downhill. Now we're feeling the blocks. Now you saw the cutback lane open up a few times on Friday. And then, when you see us get outside, when we run outside the box and you see the jets and the perimeter runs, we can't do those if we're not blocking on the edge. And that was something, quite honestly, we got on them a little bit last week at practice, and they answered. And you have guys like Gabe Ortiz, having one of his best games of the year blocking, in our blocking back position and on the edge. And, like I said, it's great to see. And, yeah, realistically, when the game's on the line, there's I'm not going to do it. There's about 7 guys that can handle the ball, and we feel pretty confident getting to them. And then we've been able to, once these teams get to the second half, get the ball to about 3, 4, 5 other guys, and you're seeing 10-plus people touch the ball for us. So that's only going to pay off here as we move to the playoffs.
Yeah, because that would be my follow-up question. So by having so many talented people on the roster, you got to have fresh legs. I imagine going into the district play, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about it. We have the first round bye, so a couple things happened. The stars aligned, and I loved your email out to the parents and everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about like hug a Fox player or family member. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of things aligned for us to have that first round bye.
Yeah, your first part here, yeah, we really feel like we have fresh legs. We haven't, you don't have the guy, just we've had to do it certain ways, but you don't have the guy that's had 150, 160 carries already at this time of year, or the Tommy Gabars, the Cole Rubles. Those legs start to get a little heavy this time of year as you get to playoffs. Brady Ambrose kind of the same way. The way he was nursing it last year too, and now we feel really good about all the touches everybody has had throughout the year, and everybody's shown us really what they're good at, what they can do, and now we go out and put it all together in the playoffs. So it yes, Friday night was great. We're very happy with where the offense is, but we're not satisfied. Like you said, we get the bye week this week, and it's something that's not new to us. We've had the bye last 3 or 4 seasons, 3 seasons for sure. I don't think there's one before that we didn't. And it's a great week to, yes, get your legs back underneath you, yes, heal a few bruises and scrapes that we have right now. But most importantly, we're using it to stay fresh, stay sharp as we roll into the playoffs.
Well, with the big win at Webster Groves, that gives you your 5th conference championship in a row. So, hats off again to your team, your coaches. That is not something very easy to do. And so by
No, Carl,
winning,
as I had mentioned,
yeah,
the last 5 years as we've done that, we've been, 27-0 in conference, against these teams. And thinking about it, this honestly feels like one of the harder ones to get. The more you play an opponent, we've played all these teams for 5 or 6 years in a row now, consistently, and the more everybody becomes familiar with each other, the harder it becomes. This is, you had a 7-2 Northwest team in conference this year. You had a 7-2 Oakville team that we beat by 4 points in a nut cruncher, and this one was hard to do. This one, was definitely up there as probably the hardest one for us to get. So, it's just as special. It's just as important. And, we had an opportunity to celebrate it on Friday night, celebrate it throughout the weekend. And now we move into playoff mode.
Yeah, let's talk about our game. So, with the win and again everything happening and shaking out, we have the bye week this week. So I take it allows you and your staff to work on some additional things and get everybody healthy. Give us
Yeah,
your
we
thoughts
were.
about going up against Northwest for the second time this season. I know we did against Oakville last year. Wanted to get your thoughts about this current matchup.
Yeah, it's the stars kind of really had to align for this scenario to happen. The points we were down to, hundreds of points, between us and Oakville, tens of, point 10, couple points with Northwest right there. All 3 of us sitting at 7-2, and Oakville did beat Northwest, but the way the points came out, Northwest, Seckman, Oakville. So then we talked about being able to jump that first team. We jumped Northwest. Now we're the 2 seed, and they're the 3 seed. And then once Northwest got jumped once, they're protected. So now Oakville's down at the 4 seed, and they're playing Lindbergh this week. And I mean, we were we were so close to that being us. I mean, Oakville wins by 3. If they win, Oakville got in the red zone 3 or 4 times at least. I think we've watched the film a few times. They've got down in the red zone 4 times and didn't score. So if Oakville really takes care of business Friday, like they were, midfield, if they're doing that in the red zone, they could have won the game by 2 or 3 scores. And we're playing this week against Lindbergh. Our friends across town, they've been losing a lot of close games this year. They've been so close. It's been frustrating to watch. I'm sure for them too. It was great to see them bounce back. They beat a good Ladue team. Fox beat Ladue 26-20, I believe, and Ladue was a 6-2 team. And what that did for us is it improved our strength of schedule because Fox won a game. So that bumped us up too. So yeah, we really owe our friends across town, a huge thank you because we'd be playing this week. And it would most likely be when we did play, or excuse me, we would be playing Lindbergh this week. And then obviously the winner of that game would go down to Jackson the following week. So it's all funny because, like I said, if Oakville wins by 2 or 3 scores, they probably jump Northwest in the points, and then now Northwest is above us. So then we jump Northwest, and we become the 3 seed, and we'd be going to Oakville next week, which in my mind is the worst case scenario. I'm happy to not be playing Oakville, simply because 6 times in 3 years, I'm kind of tired of it. We actually play them week 1 next year too, so it's like, all right, Oakville, you guys go do your thing. We'll meet up next season. So, playing Northwest, an opponent, that we've already played before, and things went our way that night, but we can't be satisfied. We know they're improved from when we played us. Obviously their offense still clicking. Cohen Stark, he's a load to bring down, and he's an offensive weapon. And we did some things to control him the last time we played him, and we got to make sure we continue to do those because we've seen him break loose. He broke loose on 2 long ones against us, and one of them was called back on a holding call where we were misaligned. So, we got to be prepared all week, to bring down a heavy load, a big dude. And they've improved some things in their passing game, so we got to be tight in our secondary. And, it's really going to come down to the trenches and who wins the game up front.
Yeah, well, we're certainly looking forward to it. Again, that is November 7th at 7 o'clock. And here on the screen, you actually see the bracket. So Oakville and Lindbergh face off Halloween Eve, 7 o'clock at Oakville. And then, as you mentioned, the winner goes on to Jackson. And then that very same night as the number 2, we get to host Northwest. So obviously a lot of time between now and then, and we'll keep you updated on the podcast. And Coach, you'll be checking in with you as well. So just wanted to get your thoughts. Is this how you saw the season kind of shaking out with, maybe Jackson up on top and the number 1 in the district, and then you're followed by, us at Seckman, and then Northwest, Oakville, and Lindbergh?
Yeah, obviously for me, it's just nice to have a different story, right? Last 2 seasons, 9-0, going to Oakville, hosting Jackson. It was almost the same story. Now I would have definitely taken that story again, right? But for me, this is, we had 2 losses this year. We've talked about how those things happen. Now we're 7-2, but we're still in the same exact spot, we've been in the last 2 years. A common opponent in Northwest, who we feel like there's certain matchups we match up very well with, and there's certain matchups that they have ahead of us. This is exactly where we would want to be. And we knew Jackson was going to be run the table and be the 1 seed. So, next best thing is we want to host the game. We needed that 2 seed. We took care of our business, after the Pattonville loss, and things come our way. And, now you get this week to kind of, really hone in on, a few of the details we may have been missing all year, rest a few bodies, and then, be ready to play when it counts next week.
Yeah, certainly is, a nice reward for a very solid season to have that bye week. And to just want to remind everybody, we do have our social media channels. We'll have updates throughout the week, not only on our Facebook page, but also on our YouTube channel. And Coach, just kind of scanning the interwebs, we saw on the official Seckman X page, again, celebrating the big 56-23 conference win. And there's a number of pictures on there. And wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of these pictures and what does it mean to you? Because it seems like You like to capture these moments
Right.
and memorialize them either in the locker room or just, up here. Wanted to get your thoughts. First picture here. Obviously, we see the team there out on the looks like the 10-yard line after the game.
Is this the big team photo?
This is.
Yeah, I this is one of my favorite photos of the year. We have a championship wall in our locker room, and we've hung up this, very similar picture of the last 4 years of last year's four teams, and for me, it's really that culmination of all the off-season work, everything, every practice, every weight, that's led to that moment, and then you just feel the excitement, the energy, and for me, I always like going in the weight room and looking at and seeing the old pictures or in this case, the locker room and all the old faces and all the guys that have helped us get to where we are now. And I'm excited that this group gets to put this photo up in the locker room. And, like I said, it'll be there, until I get out. And then hopefully the next guy after me decides to keep them or mails them back to me, I hope. But, it's great, and anytime you can capture these and when you're talking about things to teenagers, sometimes they have a hard time seeing it. If it's not right in front of their face, well, they can see these teams. They can see the guys that have accomplished the things that we're trying to accomplish. So, that's really why we try to hang up these pictures and put up these records and things like that. So, we give our young guys something to look forward to and something to work towards.
Yeah, Coach. One more picture you saw, kind of on the edges of the picture. You have the guys in blue. So, tell us about your coaches and what it means for you and your coaching staff to have this type of success.
Yeah, we're like, oh man, after the game, we haven't taken a coach's picture yet. And the 14 of us on staff, these guys make a lot of sacrifices. We spend a lot of time together, throughout the season. And it's just, you have a special bond, I guess, as a coaching staff, and all the jokes, all the fun that we have, and then when we go out and we have to go out and execute as a group, it's fun to do, and these are a lot of guys, not only other coaches but they're friends and people that we continue to talk to throughout the season, and every year the staff just changes a little bit. Hoping we can get as many of these guys back again next year because a head coach is only as good as his assistants, so it's just been a really fun group to work with this year. And it's great to kind of see all of their hard work and their time and their sacrifices and their commitment and the energy that they're putting into their groups, their individual position groups, and obviously our offensive and defensive coordinator. It's fun to see it all pay off.
No doubt. It takes truly a lot of people to pull this off. You have 180 something players in the program. It's just a sight to behold. And so, again, congratulations both to you and your staff and also the players on just a tremendous regular season. And we can't wait to see what happens next. And so, Coach, that leaves us at the end of the podcast. Again, we're going to have another podcast, obviously, next week. But wanted to allow you to take us out and give us your thoughts as you head into this bye week.
Yeah, hey, we don't have to worry about playing on Halloween. I don't have to worry about trying to get all the boys to come to school. We are off on Friday with practice. Obviously, we encourage them all to show up to school that day. But it's one thing. This was earned. All the work, all the time. The commitment, the execution. These kids put in a lot of time, and then they earned a bye opportunity to play in a district semifinal game at home. And, hopefully to then go on, for our ultimate goal, which is to win a district championship. So that's definitely in front of us. We've got a lot of work to do, but, we've been here before. They've seen what it takes. They've seen the guys before them and the focus that you need on a week like this. So it's really good for our program, to have that and then go out and hopefully execute it this week.
Well, we cannot wait. And again, it is at the Valley, November 7th, 7 o'clock. We will certainly look forward to that matchup. And Coach, you just wanted to say thank you so much for your time today, and roll Jags. And we will catch you on the next one.
All right. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.